we're going to say once the tribulation begins. So we know, I love this timeline. How long is, I hate to say tribulation, 7 years. It's really Daniel's 70th week, right? Mm-hmm. Daniel 9:24, 7 70s or 70 weeks. Remember, we're on what kind of years?
360 days.
Yes, good. 360-day years. And remember Enoch, the type of the church, the clearest type of the church being raptured. Yeah. How old was he?
Here's 365.
Yes. Which is kind of a remnant saying that's when we're going to go from a 365-day year to a 360-day year.
So what is the remnant?
Oh, so the remnant, remember, it's a hint. And when Enoch is raptured, the clearest type of the rapture of the church, okay, he walked with God and then he was not, for God took him. He was 365 years old. And it's at the rapture of the church that we're going to go from a 365-day to a 360-day year. And I'll show you why that will happen. Okay, or give you some theories. So, right here, 7 years on 360-day years, okay? Which is what? 1,260 days for the first half. This is a 7 year. It's also called what? It's called times, and half a times. It's also referred to as as you go through, I'm not going to go through all the scriptures now. 42 months, okay, is this time period. It is expressed other ways too. So it's very well documented. So here's the theory. When Jesus says, no man knows the day or the hour, even though we read it in context in Matthew 24 and Mark 13, we determined when no man knows the day or the hour. What was he talking about, the rapture?
No, the
Second coming.
And people say, well, it can't be that because once the tribulation begins, we know the exact point that he returns.
So it's referencing the second coming rather than the rapture of the church. No man knows the day or the hour.
Yes. When he says no man knows the day, the hour, reading just in context, see what people do is they come through, see the rapture was not revealed into 1 Corinthians 15:51, right? After the Gospels.
Okay.
Thus, the rapture could not be in the Gospels. So when he says, no man knows the day, the hour, just read it in context. The whole thing in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17 and 21, there is no church in there. And there is no rapture in there. And it's funny, the one gospel written directly to the church by the Apostle John, okay? In the later years, he wrote to the church. That's the only gospel that doesn't have the Olivet Discourse, which deals with the tribulation period. So the one gospel written to the church doesn't have the tribulation period. Get it?
Oh.
Because we're not going through it.
We're not going to be here.
Wow. Yeah, we're not going to be here. Okay? So, I mean, if you put everything together, it's just like a big old rush. That's the premise. It couldn't be the second coming because we know the exact timeline. And right here, what happens, and we have a mid-course correction. What's this right here?
Abomination of desolation.
Yeah. Even if you lose count, the abomination of desolation. Okay, now, here's the reason why that's not true. I'll give two illustrations.
Okay.
Listen closely. I'm going to say this year, I'm going to show a video for the Tuesday night fellowship group here, okay? It's going to be exactly 3 hours. Now, I haven't even set the time yet. Okay, I don't know the date, even though I'm showing it. And, you know, just whenever my whim comes up, I'm going to show it, and then I'm going to call everybody, and then we'll get together. It's exactly 3 hours, and I won't stop it. And I'll say, right now, if I tell you, no man knows the day or the hour that video is going to end. Would that be true? Yeah. And then, oh, hang on, Clyde Cadilla Hopper, what do you want? Well, we'll certainly know it when the video starts.
Okay.
Yeah, that's real astute, Clyde. But let me tell you something. That wasn't one of the original premises. Of course you're going to know when it starts. You see what I'm saying?
When Jesus said what he said was true.
Yeah. But to say, once it starts, we'll know, well, that doesn't make, or I'll give one more illustration. If I say right now, no man knows the day and the hour that the Packers will play their first playoff game, would that be true?
Correct.
Yeah, we're in off season, then we got to have preseason, then we got to have the real season, and after the very last weekend, when they finish playing the games, that next Monday or whatever, they come out with the schedule. Tells you exactly who plays who where.
Right.
Yes, Clyde.
Yeah, but we'll know it the day after the season ends.
Yeah, that's my whole point. You just added a factor that was not in the original premise. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It is like me saying, now listen, does that make sense? And please dispute me. It's like literally saying, I could tell you when the rapture is on the way up, once it begins.
Oh.
Of course I can.
When Jesus said no man knows the day or the hour of the second coming, it was true because no one knows when it's going to start, so no one knows when it's going to finish.
Again, you're adding a factor that was not in the original premise. I'm going to go into reasons why, even if I'm correct and gave you the exact day of the rapture, okay, and we say the feast template is true, and we're going to see in 1 Corinthians, and 10 days later, right here begins the trib, right? Then wouldn't we know this? And the answer is no. Okay? And I'm going to explain why next time. Because all remnants will do is just kind of confirm a truth that's already there. You don't necessarily create a new truth. So everything that I've come up with, I haven't really created new truths with remnants, okay? I just confirmed a truth that was already there. How about this? Once I'm dead, I can tell you when the rapture is. Well, how would I know that? 1 Corinthians 13:12. He says, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am fully known. In other words, Paul's talking about the use of the gifts in heaven when we die and we're completed. We don't need the gifts because we're going to fully know all things just as we have been fully known by God. So will you know the rapture once you die?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I can say, well, it couldn't refer to the rapture because once I'm dead, I know when the rapture is. See how bogus the argument is? That's an important point because that's the one every pastor I've asked about. How come in Matthew 24, in context, it's second coming, second coming, second coming. Oops, the rapture slipped in there, and then seamlessly it goes back to the second coming. Well, because once the tribulation begins, we know the exact day of the second coming. So it couldn't refer to that. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I want to get that down and clear. Okay. Now, here's my next question. What about now? What about once the tribulation begins? Will they really know when the second coming is? My answer is no. Even once the tribulation begins, they still won't know it. Now that's going to be a hard one to get out of, right? Now, who's gone?
The church.
The church. Do non-believers really study the Bible and know the Bible in depth?
No.
Can I rightfully say that Bible knowledge will be largely missing?
Yes.
Okay. You only have non-believers left. If all Bible knowledge is gone with the rapture, they're going to be celebrating. They're not thinking tribulation period, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking, man, this is going to be good. You know, you're going to own nothing and you're going to love it and, you know, all this stuff, one world government. Yeah. Let's just give all the power to 10 guys and, man, they're going to look out for us. That's the whole thing behind the founding of our country, right? Is that separation of powers. Let's not get too much of a concentration of powers. And now let's do it in the whole world. Does that scare you? Even if you didn't know the Bible, would that kind of scare you if you knew history?
Sure.
Yeah, that should scare, that should really scare you. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, thirsty, and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and took you in naked and clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and came to you? And the king shall answer, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it to any of these, the least of my brethren, you've done it unto me. Now, is that a real obscure passage? No. Doesn't just about every prison ministry have that
Yes.
for their motto? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's not real obscure. Mm-hmm. And yet, this is not the goats he's talking to, it's the righteous. It's the sheep. They're going to go to the millennial kingdom. Mm-hmm. They're like shocked. Even though it's kind of a semi-famous passage. It's not obscure. It's not like, if I tell you, gosh, they found the red heifer. Numbers 19, right? Would you guys get excited? You're like, well, what's that got to do with anything, right? But it's not as famous as John 3:16, but it's not an obscure passage. Here's my question. Bible knowledge is so far gone that people don't know that passage. If you were there and he was saying, let's suppose it's a post-trib rapture and you make it all the way through, and he says, I was hungry and fed you and all that, you wouldn't say, when, Lord, would you? Mm-mm. You would know when, right? Mm-hmm. When you've done it to the least of these, which is Israel, his brothers. You see what I'm saying? If they don't know a semi-famous passage, you're going to tell me they know this calculation and how to set it all up? Mm-hmm. So my whole point is, even once it starts, guess what? Nobody's going to be able to calculate it. And Daniel, he predicts the exact, the 70 weeks prophecy, Daniel 9:24 through 27. He predicts Zechariah 9:9, which is, daughter of Jerusalem, here comes your king, humble and lowly, riding on a donkey. He predicts the exact day. And that's why he says in Luke, if you had only known what made for peace this day. And now they're going to be destroyed in the 70 AD. Because they didn't know the Bible. Now, if the Jews who tear everything apart and go to Numbers and stuff didn't know that day, right? Are you telling me that Christians are going to know this day? There's also, but what about now? Can we calculate it now? Even us. Well, the whole key to this is one thing that nobody talks about. People say, well, it's exactly 2,000 year segment, so he was crucified in 32, so 2032 is the year of Jubilee. And even the rabbis say it was lost and probably on purpose. Not by men, but by God. So it could be. So if I knew the year Jubilee, I could tell you absolutely for sure. So I could tell you if it doesn't come, when I tell you I think it's going to come, we're probably a year off. Okay? So even then I don't. And the second I do know, and the rapture happens, that knowledge is gone. So you understand now how no man can know the day of the hour refers to the second coming. There's going to be a crackdown on the Bible and the literature, and only what's on the internet is what they allow, the state, right? It's kind of hard to keep track of time, even if you know all this stuff, which we showed that you can't. Even if you did, look at the astronomical disruptions, okay? And I'll read them to you, okay? Think about this. This is things that are happening in the heavens. How can you keep time when all this is happening? Revelation 6:12 and 13, the sixth seal. And I beheld when he opened the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth. Would that be a disruption in time, probably?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Okay, Revelation 8:7, first trumpet. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. Okay? And a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Revelation 8:8, the second trumpet. There's a great mountain burning in the fire, cast into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. All right, Revelation 8:10, the third trumpet. The angel sounded, and there was a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon a third of the rivers and upon the fountains of water. Revelation 16:8, fourth bowl of wrath. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun. Okay? And power is given unto him to scorch men with fire. So something's happening to the sun itself. And Revelation 16:10, the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. So first the sun is kind of going supernova, and then all of a sudden there's complete blackness. And this is after the stars have fallen. So I would probably say with all the astronomical disruptions, maybe timekeeping would be hard. Okay? So you see that. So, what we reason while we're sitting in our comfy, chairs here at home, and we kind of logically figure out, well, you can calculate and all that, maybe it's not true when the time comes. Seventh is the John Travolta reason. Okay? And that is...
Stand alive.
Yes. Good.
That was good. That was quick.
Good.
I didn't get that
Good.
at
This
all.
guy's thinking, yeah.
Wow.
When you're just trying to survive, you're not trying to calculate anything except how do I survive. Plagues happen, it's like a third of mankind died. Whoa! Something else happens right after that, a fourth of mankind dies. You're not concerned with that. You're just concerned with staying alive. Revelation 7, after the 144,000 are sealed, the angel, he saw a great multitude in heaven, John did, and he asked the angel, who are these? And he said, these are the ones that come out of the great tribulation and wash their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. So at that point, there's only a few important things. But the most important is getting saved. That's it. Okay? So these calculations are not going to be just readily available. They're gone. And then if you could figure it, because of all the astronomical disruptions, you won't. You're just trying to stay alive. Verse 10. And with all deception and wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence, so they will believe what is false. Okay? Now, KJV would say, believe the lie.
That's what mine says.
Okay, believe the lie. Now, and people come up with all kinds of theories. So, what some people look at that passage and say this. Maybe they're right. I don't know. If you clearly heard the gospel before the tribulation period, and you go in the tribulation period, you can't be saved. Because you rejected the truth, and now he's going to give you over, he's going to send a deluding influence, so you're going to believe the lie. And you guys know what the lie is? You have to just read it in context. What is the lie that people will believe that reject the truth, and God sends them a deluding influence to believe it? It says right here, verse 4. It's all in context. Talking about the Antichrist. I'm sorry, still in 2 Thessalonians 2. Talking about the Antichrist who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. That's the lie that people are going to believe. That the Antichrist, the coming world leader, is God. Prophecies may be understood later, but not at the time it was given. In Daniel 12, 4, 9, and 10, I'm going to read those verses. Remember, Revelation is just expounding on the book of Daniel. Remember when we went through that whole section on Daniel and Revelation? Yeah. So it just fills in some of the details from a later perspective. So Daniel's the main book. In fact, if I wanted just to know prophecy, it could only have one book. It'd probably be the book of Daniel. Learn that one. About the book. This is at the end. It only has 12 chapters. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many will run to and fro, and the knowledge shall be increased. So Daniel's told by the angel, close the book, shut it, seal it up. That means it's a closed book. Now, through the ages, you could read Daniel and get nice moral lessons, homilies, and stuff like that. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about there's prophecies in there that will not be understood until the time of the end. Think of it this way. Like Paul, when he reveals what the last trumpet is in 1 Corinthians 15, how come that knowledge was not expounded upon for 2,000 years? Here's why. There's something called the Dark Ages, where if you had a Bible, they'd burn you alive. For hundreds and hundreds of years. That's what we have, something called the Enlightenment period and the Reformation. Not all the Enlightenment period was good, but you know what I'm saying. We're in the Dark Ages for so many years. So it's not like we progressed and learned these things. We're trying to relearn them. Verse 9. And he, an angel, said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Are we at the time of the end now? Yeah, I would say so. Many will be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. None of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Now look at that verse. And I'm going to go through other verses. If you say, this stuff is just a mystery to me. Oh, don't say that. Only the wicked will not understand. The wise shall understand. Okay, that's not me. That's Daniel 12:10. God expects us to have understanding. It says in verse 4 that people shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And they'll talk about how knowledge doubles what is it now? It's like something ridiculous. Every week or something, knowledge doubles. You can't keep up with it. But actually in the Hebrew it's saying the knowledge. Okay? He's talking specifically about knowledge of the Word of God. And we've had a revival of what was lost in the apostolic age with the writings, and we go through all that persecution, in the Romans, then we go into the Dark Ages, all that stuff. Now we're starting to have that knowledge and we can look at it, and God's reserved it until the time of the end. So you can see that there's a progression. We should understand it. If you go from Daniel 2:21 to Acts 1:7 to let's see here, 1 Thessalonians 5:1. You can see an interesting pattern here. What you're going to see is a progression about prophecy. And this is going to be real interesting, okay? There's a phrase, and it could be different depending on your translation. Times and what?
Seasons.
Seasons, okay? Now, we're going to take that to the Greek. Now, why would that be a problem in the book of Daniel if I take it to the Greek?
It's not written in Greek.
Yeah, it's not
Because
really
it was
in Greek.
written in Aramaic.
But is there a translation in Greek? Septuagint, yeah. Usually by LXX, which means 70, is probably 72 though. But so, times, and so we know by the Greek translation, chronos, and this is a key word right here. I'm going to bring this up a lot. Learn this one. So it says times and seasons. Chronos, we have it's just the flow of time. That's why it's translated as time. Kairos are certain portions of time. Could be a day, could be a few thousand years. It's a block of time marked by certain epic characteristics. In other words, if I say the Dark Ages, you know what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be a kairos. Or even the church age would be a kairos. A certain period of time marked by certain distinct characteristics, different from any other time, before or after, okay? So kairos. Here's what he says in Daniel 2:21. And he changes, talking about God, and he changes the times and the seasons. So it's not talking like changing it from fall to winter or whatever. He changes it, okay? Now, Acts 7:1. Remember that disciples come to Jesus after he's resurrected. And they said, is that this time that you're restoring the kingdom of Israel? That's what they expected, right? For the Messiah to sit on his throne, rule and reign from, Jerusalem, all that stuff, the millennial kingdom, or the Messianic kingdom is, they would know it. So that was a valid question. And here's the problem. People will take that out and say, see, we're not supposed to know prophecy, and here's why. And he said unto them, Jesus said unto the disciples, it's not for you to know the times or the seasons which my Father has set in his own power. See, we're not supposed to know. Right there. So forget about all this rapture stuff and studying end times. But they need to read the rest of the Bible. Okay? That was at that time Jesus said that. In other words, what he was saying, don't worry about the chronos and the kairos. Get to Jerusalem, and you got to get there, and the Holy Spirit's going to fall upon you, and we're going to get this ball rolling. That's what he was saying.
Right.
And I'll prove it. If you go to 1 Thessalonians 5:1, Paul was there for how long? Like 50 years, 60 years teaching them?
No, 3 weeks, like.
Yeah, 3 Sabbaths.
Uh-huh.
He was there for 3 Sabbaths, reasoning from the Scripture. Just read 1 and 2 Thessalonians. Would he teach them only what was important?
Oh, no, he taught them everything about the rapture. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, he taught them about the rapture, about the Antichrist, about the stuff we
every
just
chapter.
read. Yeah. Every chapter mentions Christ coming back either in the rapture or the second coming, except for the last chapter. I've always read it in every chapter, but I couldn't find it in 2 Thessalonians, the last chapter. Okay, anyway, so in every chapter but the last chapter, he mentioned that. So yeah, he gave them a whole course on eschatology. And here's what he says in 1 Thessalonians 5:1. Remember, Jesus said, it's not for you to know that. He's talking to the apostles. And by the way, they were the apostles to the Jews. Now, here's the apostle to the Gentiles. He says this, but of the times, chronos, and the seasons, kairos, brethren, you have no need that I write to you. What does he mean by that? Does he mean he's not going to tell them? No. I've already told you about the times and the seasons. And that's in the context of prophecy stuff. I don't have to write to you about anything. You guys already know all that stuff. So when someone pulls a Acts 1:7 on you, then you pull a 1 Thessalonians 5:1. It says, hey, no, there's a progression here. Okay? So now we see that we have no need of anything to be written of us, to us. And I would think the rapture would be a kairos.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a hint in Thessalonians where he refers to something that is really, you have to kind of dig it out, and I will later. But that refers to the rapture as a kairos. And he's saying right here, well, you don't have any need to written to you and stuff. Revelation, okay, 1:1. It's the apocalypse of Jesus Christ, the revelation of Jesus Christ. His Father gave unto him to show his bondservants. In other words, it was the revelation of Jesus. What's prophecy all about? Revelation 19:10. When John fell down at the angel's feet to worship him, he said, don't do that. He says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus, or the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. It's all about Jesus. Jesus is revealing, get this, stuff that his Father revealed to Jesus himself about himself. There was a revelation later on, but he took his deity and laid it aside. I'll show you that verse later on. Not his deity. That's a bad word to put. Bad way to put it. You can't lay aside your deity if you're God, but the attributes of Godhood he laid aside. In other words, his omniscience, his omnipresence. Because he became a man. God was contained within a man. Now that's a mystery. How God could be contained within a man. He had to learn the scriptures.
Yeah.
Even though he was the scriptures and he wrote them. Remember I talked about how it was the Father's responsibility to teach the Son the scriptures, and how Jesus learned the scriptures. Anybody remember that from Isaiah? I think it's Isaiah 50. It says, this is off the top of my head, he's given me the ear of disciples. He awakens me morning by morning. And that's when the Father would do. He'd wake up his Son in the morning and teach him the scripture. The Father actually woke up his Son, which was the procedure, and taught him the scriptures. So, he came to live the life of every man. So he purposely limited himself. And here's something you have to comprehend too. At the right hand of God right now is a man. Everybody got that? Even right now, he's a man. Now, just digest that, okay, for the next 100 years. At the right hand of God is a man, Jesus Christ, and he will forever be a man. Not that he's limiting himself now, but that boggles my mind that he's a man right now.